good card's so old.
Just
Because, Danielle read the same doc in front of me, and, the first time it was kind of interesting, because I was like, yes, I love Impact Turn Debates. And then I saw the same cards again, I was like, why did y'all update these? They should have been newer.
I feel like, yeah.
Because, in the previous debate, the 1AR read some, really new evidence about neoliberalism causing extinction, and it was it would have been, really close had that been collapsed down to it. So I just kind of thought that you all would have had some newer ed for me to look good.
Yeah, we gotta up the ante.
What's
Thank
evidence?
you.
What is evidence?
Relevant in an Impact Turn debate about the sort of empirical facets of neoliberalism, and whether or not it actually does result in extinction and whatnot. Okay, are you both okay with this round? Phil?
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the dock.
Fine. Okay. And you're out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I borrow your stand?
Yeah, sure. I legit wonder if anyone has ever denied a request to borrow their stand.
Oh, I don't even know why you would do that at this tournament, because they the kids here are just you can borrow a stand from us,
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you go to the table, it's free things, water bottles, timers, things you can borrow, power strips, stands. So I don't know why you would deny someone's stand. That just seems like a good way to get your speaks to you tie judge. It's just what a douchebag. Wait, what speaks to you?
Oh, is everyone good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just pre-floating the NC.
We live in a world of security. Every action we take is intended to distance ourselves from the experience of death and our fleeing for death, endlessly resolving constructed death. Like the soldier runs a battle, we inevitably run towards it. Bojaard 1 explains the short story. Bojaard 1. The soldier meets death at the crossing marketplace, rushes to the king palace and asks him for his best order. Then the order might flee from death. Deathly blood said he made a fighting. He was just surprised to see the soldier, and we had a rendezvous tomorrow to Margaland. Yes, one runs towards one's own fate. All the more surely by seeking to save his suffering world and seeks his own death. The seemingly inevitable rendezvous need not have taken place. The gesture advances a deadly command. The two characters were both following a rule in which neither are aware. The rules of the game is that the death is not a brutal, but only occurs through destruction of innocence and innocent decipher from complicity. By a sign of signs that while it's in time, death is a rendezvous, not objective destiny. Death shows only surprise. Death lets things happen. Death has no plan. The soldier went to beat death because he gave meaning to a meaningless gesture. And security discourse specifically exists as an inaccessible, abstract idea to signify post-signification regime. The claim that national service can produce security relies on a myth and alignment, but we are never secure. The terrorists can always act. The crazy liberals will still find a way to take away your guns. Thugs are everywhere. Lunenburg 16. The actualism is by the simulation reality only exists virtually, in which there's nothing left to respect or represent. Subjects of security can no longer control the information that is supposed to protect them from threats, highlighting a paradoxical subject-object inversion. In the new virtual or security order, there's no time to representation or actualization. Threats are immediately realized without going through the detour of actualization. Within this reality, security is not signified the security. Security and security are not independent signifier. We're rating the signature external signified. They are parts of the same simulation, which has lost the potential for any form of transcendence. There is no external reality by to be transcended by the suffering subject. No actual object of security to be grasped by representation and signification. Trying to claim the idea that there's an actual reality of security, and security can only be said of the fact that the reality no more exists outside the inside the elements of artificial perimeter. The enemy sovereign, the state must control the simulation of its source. The sovereign authority simulated boundary marks the range of its simulated reality, and this discourse of security creates the worldly hyperrealm in which we attempt to understand death and the accompanying violence that is inherent in being through the replaying of images of violence. This is the never-ending episode of America's biggest tanks, but to fuel this fetishistic desire for the American democracy, the need for the others produced, we need a subject on which was violence on this creation of the other subject that can be photographed lying in the desert, lying dying in the desert to present the image of need to the west. Baudrillard 2. With the image of Baghdad presented, it's worth a humiliation, symbolic and completely fatal, which the world power inflicts on itself. For the September 11th exhilarating image of the major event is all the parody of violence, the parody of war itself. Instead, it turns into the grotesque of a reality show, desperate, immaculate power, the illustration of power, henceforth without way, without purpose, the plausible enmity. It only managed to emulate itself, the violence of the ultimate symbol of power, no longer knows what to do with itself. The Americans have been overtaken by their own power. The whole West again bursted into sadistic laughter of the American soldier. In spite of all this democratic supervision, the hope of maximum transparency corresponds to this maximum military power. All we violence that I've heard of this question, transparency, democracy, trying to make virtue out of closure of its vices. It is always the same problem. The transparency is really America that has electrocuted itself, and we demand national service, compulsory national service as a form of rupturing the simulation. Logical criticism turns on the television to watch his own revolution before it ever speaks. We break the television. We never bought cable. Instead, we embrace a rupturing of the relationship between signifier and signified. We frolic in the fundamental impossibility of guaranteeing this security. Baudrillard 3. Critique obsessed with the meaning and content and the political fanality discord never takes into account the right acting of writing, the poetic elusive form of language to play with meaning, language and writing are forms of illusion of meaning. This is the only trans-political act the writer can accomplish. A passion for the artificial for illusion is to perfect constellation of meaning. Its specification is supposedly its secret deceiving rather than validating meaning. As for speaking the language of the real, it would not know how to do it because language is never real and it appears to be able to distinguish things. It actually does so by following unrealistic and ironic past objectivity and truth, or objectivity and truth and metaphoric, ciphering, not ciphering, turning enigma to what is clear, making unintelligible to far too intelligible, situating the fake transparency of the world is treacherous, the confusion is spread, the germs of virus, the radical illusion that I say, operating radical dissolution of the real, and our affirmation of national services, one is symbolic exchange, the one is he embraces death and inevitability and implosion of meaning. We follow the course of the pre-societal savage who understands the death of social relation. This produces the antagonistic exchange between ancestors and living that produces the fluid notion of being. Our re-articulation of what it means to die is representative of a set of fluid social relations. Death is understood as an issue or part of being rather than an end or conclusion. The stagnation of these social relations, what produces simulation, locks us in the logic of the simulacrum. Baudrillard 4. Pre-societal people have no concept of everything comes from nature. This is absolute disorder since it cannot be symbolically changed, and what cannot be symbolically changed constitutes a mortal danger for the degree of desocialized death by returning by our anthropogenic laws. The physical materiality of death paralyzes the objective credence we give our primitives. Know that death is a social relation. They are much more tearless than we are of the materiality. Death less the form of social relation. Our idealism converges on the illusion of biological materiality. As our discourse reality is the primitive intervention of the symbolic. They death becomes taken reciprocal antagonistic exchange between the ancestors and living. Instead of a regular social relation between partners, it establishes a circulation of gifts and countergifts, and it's just a play responsive where death can no longer establish itself as an end. The initiation consists of an exchange. They pass from natural, alien to reversible death. The death is given and received, is therefore reversible and social exchange. They can also be exchanged under the form of symbolic reversibility. Initiation is crucial moment in the dark room where birth and death stop being in terms of life into extended in one another, not in terms of some mystical fusion, but in the instance in which term initiate the real social being. And this is the splitting of life and death. The initiation conjures away within the concubine fatality, which weighs down upon life. The advent of the life of a crime is not repeated by expiated by a collective simulacrum of death. Life is only a benefit in war, benefit in itself within the calculable order of value and symbolic order. Life is a crime that survives the unilateral is not seized by destroyed, given return to death. The initiation of this crime is resolving by separate event of life and death and symbolic act of social exchange. And the symbolic exchange creates an epistemic potential gesturing towards an entirely different way of being in the world. Join us on a journey, jump down Alice's rabbit hole, but be sure to close your eyes first. Robinson 12. Symbolic exchange is missing today for the signs the real. There were societies without the social based on networks and symbolic ties outside production because their social norms were instead based on the access exponential of the symbolic people coming out of society through initiation marked by exchange of rituals that turn people into the world of material. Symbolic exchange allows signs to meet. The symbolic exchange good object of individuality, which was from the use of value possibility to escape out the bending. Symbolic exchange towards the share separation of modernity sexuality for instance truly outside the modernity, and the academics is space for orgasm and dream for discovery of the real same path of enlightenment. Opposite of the human, it's a greater world, and the alignment of this is nothing but a farce and net-based imagination and self-destruction. The academic space of the championing the real narrative real. Thus, the role of the battles the firm in anti-pedagogy and emptying pedagogy, which tries out the academic space and the need to consume. Hoof 10. The desire to generate knowledge from one's own subjectivity without limitation, now the liberal mythical space of project of celebrations of the self-reflection, generation, justification, and production. The subject average research powers themselves through the recreating a fictitious distinctive in academia. It gives the participants to control that they don't actually have exasperated fancy of transparent communication working community or mere copies of the same. The instance of free research makes simply sure this logic increase flows to paradoxically highly exclusive out of getting discourse and tool. The truly subject exchange will not be about a problem. Your content of the degree, by the way, push it to the acceleration to the point instead of it or implosion. Cut carded implosion.
Alright. Everyone good? Alright, so starting with the AF, do you defend implementation of a policy action in which national service defined it is passed?
We defend the resolution.
What does that? Oh, that's not answering my question. Do you defend that a policy that enacts compulsory military service in the United States?
I'm not sure what you mean by defend. We're just going to defend a discussion of that policy.
What is that? What does it mean to defend a
Well, we defend the resolution. So
what does that mean? Okay, so
We
what does the 1AC do?
we defend a discussion about the resolution as a policy action.
What does that look like? So what does it mean to engage in symbolic exchange? What do
So, well, if we're talking about symbolic exchange, and specifically our Baudrillard 4 card is talking about like our relationship to death, in which we, in some instances, the symbolic exchange is talking about how we understand life as it compares to death. We understand death as a constitutive part of life, as a part of our own being. We embrace the fluidity of these symbolic
why
exchange.
symbolic? So, can you give me an explanation of your impact filtering? Like, why do the impacts of securitization, etc., matter?
Because it creates the other. That's our Baudrillard.
What is the
2
impact
card.
of creating the other?
The impact of creating other is like we're pushing violence onto some.
All right. So
Arbitrary exclusion.
okay. So the argument is just that, but if we engage in security logic, that leads consequentially to a worse harm on the other, and creates some group that is excluded.
So yeah, so like if we engage, like I mean that's like a sort of a misconception like of like framing of the ultimate impact. But yeah, ultimately we agree violence with the other is bad.
All right. Actually, back to what your advocacy is. So you say you defend a discussion of the topic, but
We defend the resolution.
that is, what does the resolution mean?
Well, in terms of the app, it means a discussion about the symbolic exchange.
So you do not defend the implementation of a policy of.
I'm not necessarily saying that.
Tell me, do you defend the implementation of a
I don't
policy?
understand what you mean by policy action. I
Will
mean,
you
I
de-
wouldn't say necessarily that
will you
we're
defend
role-playing
that
as
the
policymakers, but
will you defend the hypothetical world in which national service was
we
implemented?
defend a discussion of what that world looks like.
That's not that.
We're not role. I think the misconception here is that we're not role-playing as policymakers. We're not saying like, oh, let's go pass a bill through Congress necessarily.
So you don't say that passing a bill through Congress is desirable.
I mean, I think you're misunderstanding the point of the affirmative.
I don't see the topic in it once, so I really don't know how that's possible. But can you just explain to me how you're possibly topical then?
So okay, so in terms of topicality, we're definitely topical because we're discussing why accepting the national service as why accepting the resolution true that we should have compulsory national service should be good because we should not be afraid to experience instances of death.
What? So
We should not be afraid to experience instances of death.
So
Or
how
violence.
does that prove symbolic exchange?
So I think you're misunderstanding what symbolic exchange means. Basically, what we're saying is that the idea that we constantly need to be secure, i.e., we need to distance ourselves from situations of violence, causes the need for the other because we still understand that we want to understand what violence is. We want to understand what it would mean for ourselves to die. So we push violence onto other people so that we can then view or consume the images of their violence. So like the person dying in Syria, like of hunger. CNN goes there, takes footage of it, plays it on the nightly news. We see, oh my gosh, that violence looks so bad.
Right.
So we can attempt to securitize ourselves.
Okay, that's
Are you
fine.
taking prep?
Yeah, starting.
Sorry.
All right, I'm gonna ask again to just make this clear. Do you you do not defend the desirability of a bill through Congress, correct?
I mean, we would defend like the desirability of that bill, yes.
Wait, so your interpretation would say so the AF says if a policy passes that enforces compulsory national service, that is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, we would say that like we should support that bill, yes.
All right. 216, 3 off in case. One sec. Just setting up. Actually, I need to take a little more. Never mind. All right, 206.
What are the nature of the offer?
2 shells, NC. Alright, everyone good? Alright.
Yeah, I'm good.
Alright. Brackets interpreting the debater inserts brackets into evidence and must say right for the evidence. This evidence fact in violation several cards and when you see the bracket didn't say anything. Check your flow, you didn't say violation of standards, active, honestly modify the words after the self modification change for something argument. The other words instead of the debate explain why your evidence modified it. Honestly, judges sure that you call for your own answer resolve any persuasion by otherwise not representing words of qualified authority. Violation active words and evidence norms and judge calls for evidence agrees right to discard the evidence academic. Honesty is a voter always say one question everything else in light about the evidence can lie when anything is to be discarded functions will fair and same when any fairness like you know accurately determine the arguments legitimate points I try to not if they're really good debate if they choose to just really real precedent misrepresent any offense with others you shall look at 24 to drop the bear 1 TFC rule question where you vote on your second step for the deterrence shooting for your appeal group aspect never the auditor CTSC would make up for time invested into your computer one no such things reasonably cheating or either will clear your second reasonable archer no brown for the archer investor job valid the right use of brown self story let them get away with it next off interpreting all TFC but distributing charges debaters must disclose all program then on DSC will disclosure must disclose full tag complete citation and the full text of each piece of evidence disclosure must occur within 30 minutes right of violation check the wiki don't disclose full text they just disclose for they don't disclose full text they just disclose the first sentence last sentence step and one accessible is huge collision basically collected but the most online predictions high on adjust because are possible to debate access target full disclosure even if it's inaccessible if a debater can understand the correct arguments based on the first 2 lots of disclosure never allows to in voter way not have any debate with any perspective also good and also empirical voting in the context is ground I clicked on multiple of your links that they just didn't exist second reach your more disclosure happens in better more act as opposed to case more read learn and black out the snail so within disclosure motivation reach debate after their opponent case go new level researching authors arguments after the debate disclosure satisfies also reclassified and also publicly acceptable evidence reference reach back if you go down a long time with seconds third restaurant I disclose full time you automatically gives you structural crack potential for me last time hunting through articles recutting have to find my always a good every disclosure good advantage for them but not from point of view the counter-interpreting with great self-self learning risk for the key different equal straight after also it's not an uncritical interpreting I've disclosed this interpreting however fairness vote about last better but you can't turn around shows you fairness always you critique you not leveraging the argument I don't contest the ability of Bowie I say you can read about your after that's perfectly fine I just say you should have disclosed it full text you shouldn't have bracket any reference which means there's no possible strength like being one fairness key to evaluation argument seems true fairness true medical strength your ability to best determine who means role 1 to makes the other 3 includes all true obligations though word C point is a logic every argument can see the authority of fairness I that this is judgment of reciprocal relationship I can see that you'll fairly value the arguments which you see if they say fairness not a vote of fairness press you can vote against presumption you have no reason to vote for them drop the debater this shall there's no dropping argument sides actually competing interpretation also uniquely in the context the key to create good norms for disclosure asserts that we actually have something no arguments one illogical you win for bringing fairness of proof I should go to the rod no it's not something you should win for second it's illogical it's which means second shall affect theory prep like counter can be third theory rest process theory is not a nib you can link it impact or not I go for new one air shells go for I violator go for reasons why fairness to the press etc which means that arguments give you too many ways to the next stuff starting point around practical reason 3 what say let's regress after you ask why the binding question why I do this connection ask why only practical words reside in the deductive foundation after why should rational see because the authority power of agency has words medical office and how would they determine what counts of word first to ask regarding and medical from who so value normal consider second action there only a value action because it's also the reason of value action infinitely the value action for example I was briefly become one action multiple small action only attention to briefly the unified action unified action we cannot classify certain action moral infinitely the reason to you for the reason for one action reason for another I cannot change you plus you it's true for me not for you that's okay just skip the next blur independently compatible with is incompatible with the Burchard method which proves negation comes unconditional respect for human in itself of course you add 3 brackets for gender language when rational being and takes an action they simply the subject be good to the missing unconditional good conditional good is further and inclination not exist object would be able to unconditional value but must humanity regarding the extent of rational being is subject to principle human actually regard current values regarded ethos and always able all the frames clock on continue there's source obligation intrinsically good action break for goodness of rational be put in the sentiment frame like here what we said S must be necessary not contingent it's necessary truth that way probably necessary truth possible order that implies all the worlds and it has to prove 0 risk my firm infinitely for one universal predetermined the direct of determination self-determined act until direct controls action acts result and agent which means that would be no way to prescribe normal obligation to their forever course guard. To understand your will is as extent of your action and sense law defined agency will not be a different representative sort to represent a universal that truly predictable will must embrace the particular the only domination size second only universal ability can effectively explain the purpose of an agent. That's the best method for guiding a person thus far to the universal concrete that required the context of making the agent after context of body fact not satisfy making desires of right structure pure curator universal law action mechanism that individual law so that's universal law inclusion I can now can't prove CNS is bad defense the idea of national service good con negates their office as secret law advocates national security contribution to society towards their state force public action violation stuff which big human being only cause obligations or voluntary decision obligations saved by being more moral act so precedent and service hardly considered with tenets of the free society. Now the case debate first over to all the case arguments they assume the only terminal impact they go for is that you lead to an ontological violence or exclusion of the other if you are not engaging with some sort of symbolic distinction. However, some problems this one this relies on the presupposition that we can use induction in the first side that we can use past events to prefigure the future. Look their vote on awards or their securitization awards. Those are all based on past events. However, induction fails. Induction assumes that you can use past predictions in the future, but the only justification why you would be able to do that is it worked in the past, which means the logical fallacious, which means the entirety of the one is logical fallacious. Vote negative presumption right there because the plan that liberty cannot do anything. Second, exclusion is an inevitable condition of human subject. For example, me reading an argument excludes the possibility of another argument, which means every metaphysical concept is one of exclusion. Me existing, my identity only exists in opposition to your identity, which means your impact's inevitable. Yet we have to. We should not to say that exclusion isn't bad, but the point is that we should not use empirical exclusion as starting point of ethics. Rather, we should achieve universal reason. What's the only way to get out of the empirical contradiction? Now the Baudrillard evidence. This is the first piece. Now the limelight out there. First off, the Baudrillard one piece of evidence. This is really bad. All it is a Baudrillard story about how death is prefigured by the subject. However, that begs the question why it's normative, or why should we care in the first place, or why there's any sort of terminal impact. Obviously, if I warrant my arguments that takes it out of the security of the securitization argument. One, sure, this is about symbolic exchange. However, this begs the question why symbolic exchange is a good methodology in the first place. If I answer this argument like cancel that takes it out. Second is no. Turn by using the state, you allow people to re-entrench their sides. The idea of securitization, that subject should be able to engage in a state of symbolic exchange. However, rather we should break away from state, use a sense of deviance because what he still refers that the state policy would be a good methodology. However, my argument that the state policy is a bad methodology. Your discussion resolution is wrong, which proves your argument that you say the security is the instance of the hyperreal. It's a good way to understand evidence. However, this argument is just that there's violence of reality show. That's not intrinsic to the structure of action. If we weren't even framework for this argument is that just not relevant. You say that your next argument is that there are we have to have a reaction to writing meaning language. However, this is just an empirical institution. If we want our framework that takes out whether or not we should use empirical, you say for a method of self-evaluation. However, there's no warrant for why national service is good at symbology. You say national service prefigures a bunch of image. That doesn't mean that you should engage in it as a state policy or say or that your discussion to keep solving an actual say second link turn concepts better than a symbolic exchange. But your argument that we have to divorce ourselves with between the gap of the symbolic and the real. However, the context is the best. Does have an argument that universal reason the best starting point in order to engage in that affect analysis. Also, your Boudrillard for evidence is just an empirical warrant. No, it's just a description of method. No empirical warrant and your argument. Your state symbolic potential is good in terms of however these are all consequential arguments. The question there's no normative reason why these impacts are your increase in policy that assumes you can use consequential in the first. I won't want consequential to here. Takes out the entirety. One cross by induction. Second prediction is possible because every argument leaves an infinite amount of consequence, which means you have to predict the actual outcome to the various thirds aggregation subject what understands symbolic exchange for one person different for another, which means your methodology is bad. You also off your roll about argument one content function of the psychology roll about because it says that the standard roll about should be best engaging universal reason. It's the best way to pedagogically deconstruct. Second, this argument is just in the concept of community action and things that are existing in status quo. Obviously, by NC is a new form of pedagogy, which means it disrupts this argument because we refocus, we take away from the focus on empirical studies. You say we draw knowledge from one subjectivity. Obviously, we don't do that. We use universal reason, which means that I turn every single one of your framework warrants. Look, all of their framework warrants are just using subjectivity bad. Kant is obviously not that. This is objective reason. Solves the entire VF. Yeah, I didn't read any of the arguments on case.
Okay. Yeah.
And the other thing I deleted was that thing about counter methodology, just that blurb took it out.
Yeah, I got it. Are you ready?
Yep.
On the first shell, what is the voter?
Academic honesty.
Oh, academic honesty, independent voter. Why is that justified?
The two warrants: A, calls into question every other argument you make. B, it's
doesn't the include? Okay, I understand. Never mind. Sorry. Does the inclusion of brackets? Why doesn't the inclusion of brackets in the text solve the inter?
What?
Why doesn't the inclusion of brackets in the text solve the inter?
Because when debaters spread through it 400 words a minute, obviously people are not going to be able to go in there and see, oh, there were brackets. People are going to miss those things. You should probably call it out at the top like I did.
Okay, so yeah, but why? Okay, so in the Baudrillard 4 card, right next to Baudrillard 4, when it says we condemn savages and then quotes, why doesn't this solve?
That's not the only instance of brackets in the one I see. Also,
what's the other instance of brackets? What?
You also have it in Baudrillard 3. You bracket for grammar, critique obsessed with meaning, obsessed by political finality. You bracket to and the.
So why is that particular grammar bad?
And also why Robinson 12, you bracket tattoos turn people to tattoos that turn people. This app is full of brackets. You have Hoff 10, you bracket.
Okay, Hoofed. Why specifically in this round are there any abuse of the brackets?
The point of
I'm just asking. In this round, was there any abuse of terms of academic honesty in this round for the brackets?
Yes, my argument is by putting brackets without declaring the evidence as bracket that intrinsically creates a sort of that violates judge perception, which means that this shell is key to calling you out.
Yeah, I understand that, but were there any problems of the brackets in my app that allow any other
Distortion of evidence?
Yes.
Yes
or no?
I'd say Baudrillard 3 could be slightly distorted, moralizing ideological culture obsessed with political finality. There's probably a distinction in terms of the way you could understand it by saying content is obsessed with political finality.
Okay, all right. On the so it's just on the second shell. Why does full text disclosure matter if we disclose the website URL?
Several of those website URLs don't work.
Did you test them?
Yes.
Okay. Wait, so why okay then
Also, it's a question of the norms.
Yeah. So but in terms of the voter on that shell, what's the voter on that shell?
I read a fairness voter.
So it's fairness voter on that shell. So just to clarify the voters of these shells, the first shell is academic honesty and independent voter. The second shell is fairness.
I also have an accessibility voter on the second shell.
Is accessibility and independent voter? Is that justified in the shell?
Yeah.
Where?
Accessibility is an independent voter. We cannot have any debate without the ability to participate.
Okay. And now let's go to in terms of classifying con. If we want to decide to con, if we win con, do case responses go away?
I don't know what it means to win Kant, so I can't.
If we prove the framework's wrong, do case responses go away?
If you prove Kant is wrong, we would go to the AC framework, and then it's still a question of offense under that framework.
Okay. So why specifically does the app violate Kant or violate universal will?
Several arguments. First, the Course Guard 83 evidence would prove, even if you're going to just say that Baudrillard is like a method, so questions of the consequences of questions of your policy don't apply, Baudrillard and Kant are incompatible, which means there's no permutation. If I prove the argument being that your entire argument is that we have secured ourselves in terms of our value, we should affirm that get rid of the distinction between life and death. Course Guard makes a very clear claim under Kant we would value agents as ends in and of themselves, which means unconditional respect for human worth. That's obviously not Baudrillard. Second is I make an argument for why national service as a concept is incompatible with Kant.
I understand. Go ahead, Brooke. So we have 1 minute left. Can I borrow this?
Sure.
So the order is going to be new off, and then the order that the shells were read in the case, and then like just like the order they were.
What's new off? Wait, no. Are you?
Yeah, new
Are
off.
you set? Is it?
I can.
Is
see
it
it.
extemp? Or you?
Some of it's most of it's extent. Like just
Or do you? All right. Do you have an interp though?
yeah. I'll kind of show it to you after the.
Do you have the interp written down?
Yeah.
Okay, just show it to me after this. It's fine.
It's ready. Okay.
Firstly, the interpretation on this topic, the deck must read explicit advocate text in the NT in which they delineate what kind of service that they defend, restricting whether they justify a permission or obligation to do so violation. They didn't have such text in the one in. Prefer. They're virtually indicated and have a national server that actors can implement, and there are medieval differences in them. Sides of my link, based on their normative status, they let some shit next week in school that a subset of national server I win turns to, and without a text, they aren't held to defend all categories. They can kick anything impacts. 1AR ground. The 1AR teacher will cover everything. The 1 in just 7 minutes. The one the best 1ARs have to collapse on issues way against other offense, but that makes it impossible to that can ever win for first structural arguments. They're grounded in inherent features at the activity to reciprocity. They can functionally if they conduct when I try to my advocacy, which gives them an advantage. They can clearly link this at and force me to defend advantages. They can immediately link all the mind key defenders to reciprocal practices. Give us an equal starting point to define that competitive activity 3 advocacy skills. They are encouraged to de-link rather engage my interpretive system of things stable base in which we spend more time weighing arguments and clashing on the content of actions, the unique skills of the having a round about the reading affairs to good advocate the real will and voters fairness cross-apply their warrants, drop the debate or key to norm setting and cross-apply their warrants, vote half, key to defer each fact process to drop their arguments, don't feel the same also system norm shift the community toward the better approach and no RBI. You should win for just being fair about your fair education logic comes first to get the debate connected to the real world and a consequence to make it discussion and 7% exi bias and 713 times it means we need the 1ART to check abuse and after before 90. 8 points be frame your abuse, you should win if we review your strategy abusive. B 27% night bias, next side bias means you should prefer after on face and C half times Q means that you have to must come first that they can cover all their shell and we can't cover their shell. D our shell challenges the way you read your shell, so our argument is that we can't show you why we're not abusive because you crafted an abusive 1 and C strategy and specifically on the academic honesty shell, you could have one to CX check solve the end to solve all the abuse. You could have asked us in CX checks if where we had any brackets, where we had a bracket in the AC, and we would have specified also there's no abuse in this round, so don't vote on it. There's no abuse in this round, so don't vote on it. You can't vote on abuse, individual abuse specifically on their shell because there's infinite abuse that could happen, and the abuse that happens actually happening in the app doesn't justify the thing. Doesn't justify, and disclosure also checks the abuse in the shell because we are disclosing the cards so you can find them outside of the round and on the second shell. Bojarad comes before the second shell. First, extend Luxembourg 16. Security discourse is the realm of any table. We can never be completely fair, can never craft the perfect interpretation to one and see relies on a myth and alignment that they can show prevent the future abuse. They can prevent me from meeting the traffic and that they can produce an equal debate. This is where we'll never be secure. Their abuse claims only resolve the second Morocco, which we side they will always be abusive after will always be side bias. There will always be 34 than we need the rest. We can never attain security. The shell is a pointless activity security and 3. Extend Bojarad 2. This is specifically on their second shell about the full text disclosure. First, extend Bojarad, the language is meaningless. The simulation mutates words into action and more words we can never truly decipher the meaning without deciding existing in the simulation because while language may appear to indicate a material implication, the implication is always a metaphoric truth. They can never be translated have the same meaning. Attempting to understand language is futile. Basically, the implication of this argument is that full text disclosure would not solve anything because we can never actually understand the meaning of the words we are reading, and thus your reading of the words from the full text of the disclosure would not solve anything. And actually, generic arguments on the shell. First, providing the link in the wiki solves all abuse that you can click on the wiki. And do you say that encourages accessibility? However, this is bad normative accessibility. Encourages debaters to just copy and paste things from the doc and not actually going to find the research and do it themselves. And 2, you try to take talking about research burdens. However, this is bad research burden. Research burdens turn this against them. The debater should have to at least click on the link and find the PDF article from the citation. This is good research burden. They don't actually link to the 10 and 3 is reciprocity just because you do doesn't mean I do it. You could have also asked me for a round of disclosure with the app and I would have done it. And our voters come first and specifically on case. First, there's no actual violation of the con. You try to say that universal is willing. We have to make the action universalizable. However, there's no violation. Your only implication to that you read a generic course card, or you read a generic argument in the sense that the corporation national service violates. However, we don't defend political implementation. We discuss a national service. That means there's no violation. We are not restricting the freedom of anyone. We're just saying that people should view things in a certain way. There's no violation of the content. So overview how you vote off 1 ART. We win no abuse on the first shell, and Baudrillard takes out the second shell, and no violation of con.
Alright, so orders, wait 1 sec, I need to set a timer. 2:06. But why is disclosure uniquely an attempt to securitize or find meaning if whereas your 1 AR interpret literally asking me to write an advocacy text for you to read? No.
That's so we can understand the comparison between arguments.
So why is okay? So why does you say we have to understand a comparison between arguments? Why is disclosure, full text disclosure, not the same thing? If my argument is I need
because
to be able to read
it's the idea that understanding how the simulation works in debate, i.e., participating within the systems of simulacrum, is different than outside of debate, trying to like pre-round prep to secure ourselves for the actually participation in the
Okay,
simulation.
so it's an out of round vial. Okay, that's fine. Alright, order's gonna be AF, just like the extend, you know how he like extended like the AF on the disclosure shell? Just go to the AF, like I'm just extending my responses to those arguments that were in the 1NC, then Kant his 1 AR shell with an overview starting like responding to his stuff, and then the shell prompter, the disclosure at the bottom.
Just tell me where to go.
Yeah, I'll start on the F. I'll start on the F. Okay. Okay, good. All right. 1 AR's got no chance on substance or the impact turn. They extend every single Baudrillard argument through having they conceded general framing issues that take out the entirety of Baudrillard. First, they conceded that Baudrillard relies on the principle of induction. Every single argument they make is principle of induction. I that relies on the you can use the past to predict the future. For example, all the arguments by Baudrillard is true is that security has been bad in the past. For security, death logic has been really bad in the past. However, they conceded induction is logically fallacious because the only justification for why we can use the past is that it has worked in the past, which means that the entirety of the AC framework goes away independently. Which they've conceded all the framework responses. Also, they conceded all the reason why case for like continuity is uniquely the true ethical theory that takes out Baudrillard because the entirety of Baudrillard is an argument about how we have to focus on the symbolic constraints as key to resolving any sort of universal problem. However, they concede that argument the Richmond life and death. However, they concede the universal resolves the bridges the gap because it means that we only focus on the universal and abstract ourselves from empirical circumstances, which means there's absolutely no framework for Baudrillard that they could possibly go for, especially when they've conceded arguments for why their framework is impact justifies relies on induction, and that induction fails, which means they don't get access to the impact turns out the content. The entirety of the framework was conceded, which means that you don't even have to look at any of the AC framework. You can just vote the break have a proactive extension. So extend the argument about morality has to be universalizable. That's the action, and the first reason is skippable argument argument that action theory argument that every action can be infinitely subdivided into an infinite amount of actions. To be reason is the only universal bridge in order to solve the argument, and that necessarily justifies universal freedom because you cannot say 2 plus 2 is 3 for me, 4 for me, but not for you. However, now their only argument against Kantian argument is there's no violation. However, the problem is they don't have any offense, which means under a comparative world, under a competing offense paradigm, you still have to vote on a risk of offense independently. They can see the framework incompatibility argument that goes through a theory argument. So extend here the entirety of the 1AC framework and their discussion of that like presupposition is that we should not treat humanities intrinsically valuable. That was a conceded argument because they rely on the premise that we should make death and life one and the same, and we should not care about the intrinsic good of individuals, which means that the entirety of the NC is a way when we care about intrinsic good of individuals, which means that NC denies any sort of 1AC. You have to tie them down to some sort of stable stasis point of starting point of discussion, which is the idea that we should care about the symbolic exchange. The NC protects the symbolic exchange obviously proves the framework violation. Also, the secret evidence extended here that compulsory national service is a form of coercion which violates your frame. You say you don't defend implementation. That's not relevant because my argument is that you still defend the idea that national service is good. That's part of your advocacy statement that the direction of national service is good for something. If I prove that the direction of national service or discussion of national service is bad for something, which is what this argument justifies, is negate, which means at the very least, you should value this question of risk of offense. They don't have any comparative offense possibility. Now first briefly on brackets, I'll concede your arguments against brackets, but they fuck you on the 1 theory show because your argument is that CX. Your arguments here are the 2 arguments he offered. He said CX stress. If he had asked him cross-examination, I would have told him where he had brackets. Obviously takes out the entirety of 1 interpretation. I would have told him what my specific advocacy text if he asked him 1 which means that this argument justifies. Also, I'll concede potential abuse. It's not a voter, but the abuse of 1 shells also potential abuse. But the point is that I could have potentially been abused by not speaking advocacy text and shift out of arguments, but that is not something I necessarily did in the context of round special. When they don't even go for turns on the NC, which means this argument is just not relevant at all. The point they make these arguments by potential abuse, not of cross checks on the disclosure. Don't let them respond to those 2 are there term allegiance. They shall now the underview arguments. First, I'm going to go first framing issues and negating is harder than affirming. Game point is affixed first and last, which means there for constructive advantage in terms of how the frame debate always there any of the times you through the judge can you can always use ethos and persuasive framework to get rid of those people 1 control directions. Right, you can read 1 theory, you can collapse on any other flow, you can go for link charts, impact charts, or literally do anything. You also create an impact 7 times you to take 13 times Q argument because it creates an impact in new direction. It's purely runs around when you read 1 theory, not line on your specific argument. Your first argument is 7% side by side. You don't provide a statistic or a p-value for this argument. Also MPO, which means you should reject. Also, there are also have been past topics where negating has been easier, which means that there's just no empirical verification. This argument prefer analytics over empirics, but they actually have actual warrant because you don't actually provide a methodology for your argument. It's other arguments for why affirming is hard to see. He says that there's 13 times you average 1 times Q, you get 13 32nd 1 theory. You usually gets rid of the times you create 7 times you your third argument consists of a warrant and an impact, which means you only have to try to respond to arguments at first. So the fact that it's 7 4 6 3 is sufficient for you. Also 4 you can just leverage the case which gets rid of any times Q arguments. But times Q is not a fair fall, but you can actually determine how much of times Q, which means you should just reject the arguments because it's completely arbitrary. That this is also impact transfer shell because if it's getting hard, I should be able to structurally skew them in some ways. This is also response to every single framing argument that they go for because are the arguments for why their shell always my shell rely on them winning affirming is harder. Obviously, if I impact transfer arguments, then I prove that if the negating is hard. That means you should provide my shell over their shell. That also my shell always on lexical priority because the question is the point is I was forced to be slightly abused because you were abused. Now counter interpretation conference the interpretation of the plank of the if I check across if I'm willing to specify crossing this also you reason that but to crossing check 1 is the limits there's an infinite amount of possible national service advocacy that I can defend and I can defend the status quo or any infinite amount of different aspects, which means if I specify something and want to say it means I can specify something that is completely predictable for engaged crossings unless or equal equitable division of ground because then I can specify something that you would have wanted me to defend in cross examination which solves 100% you base seconds infinite regress or infinite amount of things I could expect and also infinite amount of things you could have possibly said. For example, you didn't read a value criteria, you didn't read a specific aspect text that explains what your enforcement is. There's infinite amount of things I don't hold you accountable for those. You should hold me accountable for that. We can have also counter interpreting converse that they interpret with the plaintiff if they don't have the advocacy text daily what policy that they say is good at that which proves that a performative contradiction with the point I can never engage in their specific arguments which I couldn't have an advocacy text in the first place in terms of what the policy will look like. Now, while you say national service actors are different, however, obviously, and this is obviously not responsible because this insight affirms not the negative. That's the reason about them now. Because the point is, I can just defend the status quo. You shouldn't just logically assume that, which means it takes out your argument. There's no reason why I have to specify if I'm not even defending a national service. If my entirety contention national service is bad, obviously I don't defend an actor at all, especially given my content frame, which makes it pretty intuitive. Second, obviously, there's a certain assumption we can make. For example, I assume that the 1AC is durable fiat. I assume that the 1AC presumes their claims are true, which means that obviously this argument is just not responsive at all. You say that you can say it collapses 1 year trigger, however, 1 turn off. If I shift our arguments that 2 year will give you judge perception ethos leeway. Second, so you can just weigh the case and weigh the advantage of the inherent disadvantage of the status quo, which means it's still comparable to any argument theory. I cannot just make new weighing arguments that I make another 2 hour. You say reciprocity, however, you say reciprocity with a clear, bright light of distats. However, no, that's not true. In this particular case, you read 1 year theory, go for so many different things. Also view their fairness arguments. They say advocacy skills have the interpretation in stable place. However, if you really want to ask me cross examination, I'm going to defend it better, more accurate for you. Now the disposed full text argument, you just go for the Bourgeois text. However, I read if I'm reading reason why my interpretation, my Bourgeois falsity don't matter. Also, they can see the reason why fairness comes first, and you can weigh if any impact goes against the case because I presume you had the ability to test them first. Play my argument for that because you did not disclose full text, and I have the ability to test. Now the programming issue, you don't have any offense. The interpretation, so excessive accessibility argument, certain articles are paywall. The concession can be interpreted means not what you do, but what you justify. The fact is, I cannot access certain articles, which takes out your argument about how I should prep to engage for the point. I cannot have access to those articles in the first place, which takes out a trip to your offense because I cannot prep or research or read.
What was the warrant for why time skew isn't enough voter on YRT?
Like the responses to time skew, there were 5. A non-unique 1313. Second, you can weigh the case. Third, argument consists of a warrant and an impact, which means you only have to respond to one in order to access it, which means half the time is all you actually need if you go for that argument. 4, 1AR theory uniquely gets rid of time skew and creates a time skew the other direction because it's 7, 6, 5 time skew unverifiable. We cannot actually determine what the magnitude or quantity of that piece would look like.
Ooh. Thanks. The order's kind of racist. The order's gonna be 1 ART and then order. That it was like up stuff. Alright, ready?
Yeah.
First, extend the interpretation on this topic. The must read an explicit advocate text in the NC, which they delineate the kinds of services that they've been restricting and whether they justify a permission or obligation to do so. Violation. There's no such text in the 1 NC. First, we'll extend our first standard, which is ground, which is that they can kick anything. They can not having an advocacy text doesn't allow them. They can kick anything. Their response says that you should refer the negative defense to static quo. However, the negative doesn't necessarily have to defend the static quo. They can defend other forms of national service that would not necessarily violate the contency. And specifically, our argument is that in the context of you have to have explicit advocacy because not having an advocacy doesn't allow us to know exactly what the violation of freedom or the violation of universal will. We can never know how to resolve the framework on the contency. This is specific. And your second argument, your second argument is that durable fiat solves. However, durable fiat doesn't solve the argument. Durable fiat doesn't solve the argument because we can fiat different again. You say that we can weigh case. We can weigh case, and that solves. However, weighing case doesn't solve because we don't know what to weigh case to. And you also say that CXX solves the strata crossplay argument. However, you misunderstand our articulation of what CXX actually means. We're saying that CXX solves any bracketed theory issue because that's clarifying the meaning of what our specific author is saying. However, we as CXX don't solve exactly what your advocacy says because you can shift around and you can shift around exactly what your advocacy text is in the cross-examination. And our first argument is that in the advocate is better because we can hold to do, whereas the details of the text exchange are memorized by everyone. The ability to call for text is a net benefit. We have to be able to specifically call for the speech out, preference speech out of what your exact text is. Otherwise, you'll be able to constantly shift. And to clarification, the text and CXX exchange creates the opportunity for evasion. It takes multiple minutes. A lot of time people ask for clarification, otherwise in the stall. And 3, non-unique. We can do both as long as I win some net benefit of you having the text in the affirmative. You should vote on the cell. And 3 is non-unique. And 4 is CXX remedy. Any flaw with your advocacy should make it clear what your advocacy does. They interpret justify an advocacy of plan to do something that expects CXX clarification. And so the standard you're voting on is 1 AR ground because we can't actually engage with any of the arguments today because they don't have a 1 AR advocacy that we do not understand how to engage with the content because they do not have a specific advocacy text or explanation of what the violation of Kant is. This is the limited ground. And 2, extend our second standard of reciprocity, which they don't respond to, which is the non-type specific advocacy text. So they should do that for fairness. And 3 is an advocacy text. Advocacy skills we can't formulate effective advocacy to compare the worlds of the affirmative and the negative because they don't have any evidence and the counter interprets that they defend the converse to the resolution. However, this doesn't have any net benefits. They don't explain any net benefits and they will win independent sets from the shell, which is that in the world of the negative, in the world of the negative, we're never going to actually be able to understand what exactly that means in context with Kant and prefer wrap theory on face because extend our T point, which goes to functionally drop. You say our argument is that our shell challenges the way you read your shell, so our argument is that we can't show why we're abusive in your shell because you read an abusive in C position. This argument is dropped. We would have explained exactly why there wasn't any abuse on their shells if they hadn't been so abusive in their strategy. This argument dropped, and you try to say that negative, you try to critique our side bias argument. However, one, we can provide the one right now. It's Adler 15. You can call for the card after round if you need to. And two, this is common knowledge. Everyone knows about the abuse. Goes away. So prefer FT. Good man.
Okay, good debate. Voted negative. So to vote AF on theory, you'd have to be pretty confident that AF theory must necessarily come first, and that it outweighs the sort of conceded disclosure shell, which does have an independent voter. And there are two framing issues that lead me to believe that that may not be the case. The first argument is just this general concession of negating is harder. This giant dump here about the 1AR, like the 2AR ethos, the ability of you to read 1AR theory, and just a bunch of other things that sort of make me think that it's actually a little bit harder to negate. And the second argument is this lexically prior argument, which is that the reason why the negative was abusive in the first place was because that the AF decided to not disclose, which allowed the negative to do things like not spec and advocacy text in the 1NC. Your reason for why AF theory comes first sort of attempts in the 2AR to wiggle its way out of this time skew argument, because you're just like, it's independent of that, it's about, because my shell challenges the way that you read your shell, I couldn't have really answered your shell in the first place, but the reason for why implicitly that seems to be the case is because of 1AR time skew, and there are just a lot of responses for why that's not the case. At that point, I think that I should just comfortably vote negative on the full text disclosure shell. And I think that independently, there's enough defense on your shell that I'd still be skeptical of giving you like full weight on your shell. I think the three arguments that are persuasive to me are: one, the counterinterpretation with the additional plank of if you don't read an advocacy text, I think solves a decent amount of the abuse. Number two is CX checks, while I think your responses to it are decent, probably solves enough of your abuse. And finally, this just like, you should just assume that I'm defending the status quo. So none of these three, I think, independently mean that you don't win your shell, but I think the three in tandem with each other do provide enough mitigation that I can just vote on the other shell. So.
Question, in terms of like 2 in our strategy, do you think there's like anything I shouldn't have like
Too much time on Kant. The framework was conceded. You should have just extended the practical reason warrant real quick, and then the offense and spent more time on theory.
Okay. Like in terms of the line by line on the must have advocacy text, do you think like there were like arguments I should really have like fleshed out more? Or do you think my arguments were sufficient?
I think you can play a little bit more defense to this ground argument, especially in the context of your no potential abuse argument that you cross-applied. So when the 2AR is like, I could not have engaged in the first place because I don't actually know what the violation of freedom is, you should hold that in skepticism, like what ground did you lose? Like how was it impossible to engage with the content C, which is like most generic on the topic, and just be like, this sort of proves the potential abuse argument. Because it's like, this is just like not a thing with the content C sort of thing. I think that was the one place that I think could have been fleshed out more, because I think the 2AR is at least relatively persuasive in the grandstanding aspect about how it was really hard to engage with the NC, even without pointing out specifics. So.
All right, thanks.
Question about like, what do you think 1AR strategy was good, or should it have been?
The shell should have been shorter.
Yeah.
I immediately thought in cross-ex, or like as soon as you said this, like I don't understand why your like argument about securitization of theory doesn't apply to your shell as well. So I was just curious about that. I think if your shell was shorter and just like, and you just like picked 3 or 4 arguments in the framework to take out the sort of epistemological basis of Kant, that would have just been a lot better. Because like I just thought that it overinvested too much in this 1AR shell and undercovered the other shells.
Okay. And so do you think a better 1AR strategy is like the shell shorter, and then I should have just like said 1AR theory outweighs, or should I gone for counterinterpretations on the other shells?
Yeah, there definitely needs to be counterinterprets to the other shell. I think 1AR theory I don't think this shell particularly is that super strategic, because the way you're going to beat like more frivolous NC shells like this is just like having a more truthy interp. Because like brackets is like meh, like full text disclosure is like meh, but also like must read the MC text in the 1NC if the NC is like Kant is also like meh. So like it's just better to have like a more truthy interp that allows you to just sort of be like, this abuse on their shells is silly, and that allows you to like more persuasively go for like 1AR theory.
So like do you think a better shell would have been like you get one like theoretical objection to the AF, or like
maybe I don't really know if I don't know if like the NC strategy was so abusive to like warrant theory.
Yeah.
Like maybe like can't have 3 independent voters would have been like, or like must weigh between voters or something. That seems like must weigh between voters at least seems more strategic, if anything, because it's meta theory, and that like makes it a lot easier for you to claim that 1AR theory comes first.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else?